Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Daddy?
Walaikum salam. I'm well. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, all well.
Good.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm incredibly grateful to have you not only here today, but also as my mentor and also my biggest supporter in everything that I do.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So let's go back to the start. Who is AbdulRazak Lakhana? Can you highlight the events that have shaped your journey?
Okay, so I'm a family man. I'm a businessman, industrialist, and I'm born and bred in Pretoria, the old Jerik Bazaar or Marabastad as it is now known. And yes, my early childhood was there. And over the years, I've had tremendous and exciting experiences in between the difficult times that we have faced in our lives.
Okay. And could you highlight what your teenage years were growing up and how did you get into business?
So I've had a very interesting young life in that my parents decided that we should emigrate. And at the age of 10, I went to Pakistan. A total cultural shock in that a camel cart came to fetch us from the ship. And I had to go to school in a Urdu and Gujarati school, whereas I should be in standard 3. I was with the very young beginners. So it was a tremendous challenge. But very interesting for me was that my grandfather was a hawker, and he took me into the shanty town of Karachi, where he used to sell fabrics. And as a 10-year-old, he introduced me as his grandson from Africa, and the people were so excited to see me as if I was something alien. They brought out their best china and they served me tea in the best way that they could. And this left a very profound impression on me in the sense that how people lived in other parts of the world. And this was at a young age. And my father started to assemble a factory in Pakistan. And even at that young age, I accompanied him to foundries where they were fabricating these machines and seeing how very simple methods of manufacturing were being exercised and practiced in Pakistan. So that was my very early impressions. As a young teenager, I went for Hajj at a young age. I accompanied my parents, and I saw another part of the world and a lot of people from different parts. And again, that left a tremendous impression on me. So that was my beginning in life. And as I say, that I had some very exciting and different experiences from a normal teenager that I grew up with in my community.
I'm sure the travel enriches your outlook on life. Would you say that?
The travel bug hasn't left me yet, so I travel at least 3 or 4 times a year. I've traveled most parts of the world. I've experienced different cultures and places in history that are so rich, especially in the Islamic world.
Okay, that's interesting. What's your take on marriage? Where did you meet Mommy, and what was your love story in that respect?
Okay, so in the early days when I got married, it wasn't easy because there was no social media or cell phones or WhatsApps, or you couldn't just contact anyone. Mommy's brother lived across the road from us, and I used to see the sisters come there often. And I asked my mother to propose. I was very concerned about the fact that one needs to be compatible. And this being engaged gave me the opportunity of meeting her once a week and just having a conversation and getting to know her and whether we would be compatible. And of course, ultimately we got married. And I heard a friend of mine say once that he never knew that you could fall in love with your wife. And here was a situation where, yes, we were two strangers. We got to know each other over a period of about 10 months that we were engaged. But it is so important that there's mutual respect, mutual understanding, and mutual compromise. So if you respect each other the way we do, and we agree to disagree, and sometimes we disagree to disagree, but it doesn't get to a point where it becomes a major issue. We have had a long journey. I've been married for 45 wonderful years. Yes, I did fall in love with my wife, and I have a wonderful family and grandchildren. And I'm blessed in the sense that I see them every day and I'm with them. And that is priceless for me.
So what advice would you give for a long, fruitful marriage?
So most importantly is to know your spouse even before you get married, in the sense that, are you compatible? And it's not about agreeing on everything. It is about being able to be with each other and being able to be selfless and considering your partner over yourself. So in that way, you are always, when you are in love, you would do things that you wouldn't normally do just to please your partner. And if you can continue that practice throughout your married life, where you consider your partner before you consider yourself, then it just makes for a very good understanding, a very good relationship, and that love grows as time goes on. And this is one of the things that people need to understand, is that it's not always about you, it's about the two of you together. What is good for both of you? What is good for your children? How you conduct yourself, the relationship you have, and the impression you create upon your children. Because if you are living your life very civilly, your children will learn from that, and they will grow up in a similar manner. If you have constant fights and abusive language and abusive behavior, your children will learn that. And ultimately, you want to have harmony. You want to have your children grow up as good people, both when they get married as well as in society. So it is so important that the relationship that you cultivate between yourself and your spouse is such that you can have your moments, but they don't get out of hand. For example, if my wife and I disagree on something, or we're really disturbed by an issue, we may not talk to each other for the rest of the day, but by the end of the day, it's over. And in that way, there is no further build up and anger and distrust and hate and so forth. So very important is that you cultivate this relationship in such a way that both of you understand each other, and that makes the bond between the two of you even stronger. So very important is being selfless, being considerate about your partner or your spouse, and agreeing to disagree from time to time. And that is of tremendous value.
Beautifully said. I know that your favorite quote is, have a passion for everything that you do. Why is that so important?
So if you want to achieve excellence in anything that you do, whether it be washing your car or running a business or whatever you do, your interests, if you develop a passion for it, you will achieve excellence. And in that way, it is very self-fulfilling, in the sense that you feel the sense of achievement or the sense of self-contentment in the knowledge that you have done your best, and you feel that comfort within yourself that, you know what, I've done my best, and the only way you can do it is develop a passion for whatever you do. And it's not limited for one of your interests. It applies for everything that you do. So if you have your staff, for example, and I say this to the many staff that we employ, that if you are sweeping the floor, develop a passion for sweeping the floor. Think to yourself that nobody can sweep a floor like you can do. And it'll give you a sense of accomplishment. And that is priceless. So everything that I've embarked on, and in my life I've embarked on many different endeavors and enterprises. And in each instance I've tried to apply a passion. And I've seen the result of that, in that I've been successful, and there have been difficult times when I may not have succeeded, but ultimately it gives you the sense of accomplishment in that you did your best. So whatever you do, in search of excellence, have a passion.
Absolutely. What is a valuable lesson that you've learned from a difficult or challenging time in your life?
So very challenging for me was our move to Malaysia. So in 1998, we decided that we needed to seek another home in view of the crime, the moral values in this country, the future. And I decided to move to a Muslim country. And we moved to Malaysia for a period of time. And looking at other people that had emigrated, they usually go to a foreign country and decide what are they going to do. And I tried to look at it the other way, and to say that let me establish something first, so we're going to something where we're
That's
established and it can be easier to integrate into society and to earn a living and so forth. And before we moved, I established a factory. I found a home. I bought a motor car. I furnished the place and said to my family, okay, let's go. And I think that in as much as everybody knew that we are going to move, they were not prepared for that moment when we actually had to move. And a few days after we moved, my brother passed away, and I felt very alone in a foreign country, in that there were not many Muslim South African families that were there. In fact, there was only one that I knew. And it was a very, very lonely time for me. And in that period that we were there, then reality comes to you to say, now, okay, we are all alone here. If something happens to me, what happens to the family? Who will my children marry? Who would they find as partners? And although we had the factory there for 3 years, we only lived permanently there for 6 months. And the question in my mind was, do I move back immediately, or do I prolong the agony? And my son Yaqub was very, very depressed. He had lost a lot of weight in the first few months that we were there. And it was a very tough question as to what do we do. But I had to take this difficult decision and come back to South Africa and start from scratch again. And I don't regret it, nor do I regret the fact that we moved, because in the time that we were in Malaysia, we bonded very well as a family. We experienced what it was like to live in a different society. We made some friends in that country, and it was a tremendous experience. So my first experience when I was 10 years old was very different, but in this case, I had my family, and it was something that I could reflect that my father had gone through that many years earlier. Mm-hmm. So having to come back and to start from scratch, I had sold my factory. I didn't have a business. Fortunately, financially, we were okay. And it was a tremendous challenge to start up again. It took at least 5 years to get into a stable business and to get going.
That just shows that there's goodness in every situation.
Absolutely.
What does success mean to you, and how would you say it's evolved over the different seasons of your life?
So success is something that people measure you by. Achievements are something you measure yourself by. And I can say that I've had the most fulfilling, the most wonderful experience throughout my 70 years. In that I've been in various businesses, I've traveled the world. So having come from the clothing industry, which I didn't enjoy much, I started an export agency, traveled the Middle East. At a young age, I was around 22, 23 years old at the time. I did some mega deals in places like Iran and Jordan. But I didn't make much money because the people that we dealt with, or our principals here, eventually cut us out and were trying to do the business themselves. And when I got married, I realized that, you know what, time for fun and games was over, and I had to have a stable life and a stable income. And I joined a metal trading company. I worked there for 5 years and learned the metal trade and started my own business in the metal industry. I learned how to analyze metals. I continued my exporting of metals into various parts of the world, particularly the Far East and Europe, and developed very, very strong contacts that I still have today. And when we came back from Malaysia, I needed to find another business. And being a tissue user all my life, I decided that tissue was maybe a product. Yeah. And it's strange because I knew nothing about the tissue business. And the more people tried to discourage me, the more I wanted to do it. And I bought a machine, 2 machines, employed 2 people, and started off.
That's amazing. It's obvious that there's no quick fix to success, eh?
It takes a lot of hard work and commitment and developing the passion that I spoke of earlier. So if you put your shoulder to the wheel and you work hard and you have the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything that I've achieved is absolutely and totally by the will of Allah. I've been very committed in that sense, and I feel that my success I owe entirely to Him. So hard work, commitment, good ethics, integrity, good relationship with your employees, treating them with dignity is something that brings about or is a recipe for success.
That's brilliant. What is a topic that you feel very strongly about that you think doesn't have enough focus on?
So, you know, I was fortunate to have been kicked out of madrasa at a young age because I didn't know my sabak and I couldn't read Arabic very well. But I had this yearning to say that I want to understand the Quran. And I got my uncle in Pakistan to send me an English translation of the Quran with transliteration so I could read it in Arabic as well. So again, at a young age, during my teen years, I started reading the Quran in the translation in Arabic, in English, and understood the Quran and the values that were there. And my biggest issue today is that, especially my generation, is that praying the Quran is become very important. So during Ramadan, they will count how many khatams they have made, read it umpteen times, and at funerals it would be read many times and so forth. But it is read in Arabic, and the Quran was not meant to be prayed. The Quran is meant to be read and understood. The first word revealed was Iqra, read. And if you look at the translation of Surah Fatiha, which we read every day, some of the verses say, show us, guide us on the straight path. Right? Now, the very next surah, Surah Baqarah, the second verse says, this is a book in its guidance sure without doubt for those who are committed. So if you are committed and you want to understand and you want to be a good Muslim, then you need to understand the Quran and you need to practice it. And you need to practice the teachings of Quran. So you know the late Dr. Fazlur Rahmani Ansari, who visited us during the 70s, made a statement, a very profound statement that has stuck with me. And he said that at that time, we were 700 million Muslims, but we were not worth 7 cents. And the reason for that was that we practiced a few dogmas and a few rituals. And we called that being a Muslim. Whereas Islam is dynamic. And Islam is a way of life rather than a religion. So it is not a part-time thing where we do certain rituals and say, okay, I've done my thing and now I can carry on with whatever I do. So it is a guide for us and we need to understand this guide. So I feel that there should be so much of emphasis and acquiring the knowledge and guidance of the Quran. And when you read it, there are things that are repeated, and sometimes people say, well, they repeat it so often. But you know, when you repeat something, it stays in your mind. You may have read it earlier and you forgot about it, and you read it again and again. And it comes up many times. So it's a reminder constantly. And you will not read the Quran in one day and understand it. So it is something you will read and something will be repeated again further down the line. And it reinforces those values in you. So absolutely what we need to do is we need to understand the Quran and put it into practice. That's my advice. And if you look at the other aspect is that the Prophet ﷺ is referred to as Rasulullah. The word Rasul means messenger. And he brought the message which was the Quran. If you don't understand the message,
what are you reading?
Then you have achieved nothing.
What is your life's motto?
You know, I think that very important aspect is to be content. And how do you achieve contentment? You need to understand that there are people less fortunate than you, and there are others that are perhaps more fortunate than you. But you need to acknowledge what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Your health, the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the ability to eat, the ability to sustain ourselves. So that accounts for a lot of reason to be content. Now, if you are content, you will not know what is envy. If someone is doing better than you, you will wish them well. And by wishing them well, you will bring contentment
Blessings
to your heart.
Yeah.
So that is the first important aspect. Now, if you look at how life is today, it has become a life of competition, people competing with each other, engaging in various ways to show people I'm better than you. And one of those is fashion. So if you look at fashion and designer clothes and what is it about? Is it trying to impress someone that you can afford this, or you have something better than them? Is this one-upmanship? Are we caught up in a web that we can't get out? And if you look at how outrageous this is, right, is that people wear clothes that are torn, that make them look like beggars, right? I mean, if you look at the level at which they wear these torn clothes, in earlier days, if you had a small tear in your clothes, you would be ashamed to wear it. You would be ashamed to wear it even if it was patched. Mm-hmm. Today, they have a patch and a tear on the same piece of clothing and they're proud to wear it. So what the fashion houses has done is it has transformed people into zombies and idiots. In the old days, if you had to wear something that had some branding on it, it was given to you free of charge.
Free marketing.
Right? So that you would advertise a product. Today we pay an absolute fortune, 10-fold, 20-fold the value of that product just to wear their name. So how have these fashion houses turned our minds to the extent that we have got to today? Again, I'll quote Dr. late Fazlur Rahman Ansari, who said that, and he spoke extensively on fashion. So if you think about the fashion in the 40s and the 50s, where even the Europeans and the British used to wear, the women used to wear a cap and they used to wear long sleeves and long dresses, and over a period of time, the fashion houses decided to undress, especially the women. If you look at men's fashion, yes, it has moved, but not to the extent that women's fashion has changed. So slowly and surely what they did is they dropped the neckline and they raised the hemline to the point that they virtually undressed the woman. And he stated that this was done, and most fashion houses were owned by males, and they did it for their own sensual pleasure. And we have just followed this like real zombies, like real idiots that we have become, that they can sell us anything and we will pay a fortune to buy it and wear it and be proud to wear it. So if you come back to Islamic values of dressing, right, it is modest. It preserves the dignity of a woman. It makes the men dress in a way that is acceptable. It is something that has brought dignity to women, whereas fashion has taken dignity away from women. They've become objects of admiration. And they advertise a motor car and they have a semi-nude woman sitting on the bonnet, and that is the way they sell it. So we have succumbed to this, and we need to get out of it. And I pray for the day when society becomes such that they will look down upon people that are indulging in fashion to the extent that they do, and designer stuff. You take a handbag that sells for 40 or 50,000 rand, its intrinsic value is maybe less than 5,000 rand. But why do they have to have that handbag to be able to impress someone they don't like? Again, I read something in a newspaper, maybe some 40 years ago, where it said people buy things they don't need with money they haven't earned to impress people they don't like.
That's so true.
And that has gone to such extent, whether they can afford it or not, they still want to impress people they don't like. If you buy a piece that you like and you're buying it for the sake that you would like to wear it, it's a different thing. But most instances are where people want to impress other people.
It's the competition, basically.
Absolutely.
So you would basically say contentment is the heart of it all?
Contentment and self-satisfaction. So there's a thing called Maslow's theory of needs, okay, where you have your basic needs, then you have your sort of middle luxury needs, and then you have that self-actualization which you need to achieve, which is that inner satisfaction of having achieved something. Not something that people will understand, but you within your heart will understand. And that can apply to everything that you do, you know. Look, the very basic is food and shelter and clothing, right? That's the very basic. Then it's, I can need a home, a nice home, a car, decent clothing. You achieve that, and then what is there after that?
Yeah.
Right? Your luxury needs are satisfied. Then what matters to you most is your inner satisfaction. Now, those are things that you need to strive for. And if you see that last little triangle on the top, it's the smallest but the most difficult to achieve because it's right on the top. Yes. It's like climbing a mountain. But you need to do things from a point of view, not for other people, but for yourself. So your interpersonal relationships with people, your relationship with your families. I mean, you find sometimes people will talk crudely to their spouses, but they'll be so nice and sweet to strangers. Why can't you be nice and sweet to your spouse, or your children, or talk to them with respect, and they'll give you the respect. So these are all the things that give you that contentment, is when you can be at peace and you have that inner satisfaction, and that gives you the ability to be thankful and grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It takes you to that level where you can sit back and say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing is with me. Whether it's a difficult moment or a good moment. And if you look at it sometimes, when people hear about a dreaded disease, they're all in awe. But you look at it from another point of view, right? Is that they have an opportunity of fixing whatever was not right in their life, of mending relationships, of giving them that time. Because every single person is going to die.
Yes.
Right? And we don't know how and when, but that time is fixed. So if we are given time to fix something, is it not a blessing? Mm-hmm. So in every situation, you can find a blessing and something positive and something good. And this is what you need to find. For me, a personal thing is, I've started practicing something, and that is that if I'm driving and I see a pedestrian, whether he is walking across or he stops for me, I would actually wait and let him cross the street. He may not have a car, he may be a assumed lowly worker, right? But if you respect the dignity of every single human being, irrespective of their status in society or financial status, it gives you that satisfaction that you have respected the dignity of the next person. And he's the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
100%. May Allah grant us all that peace and contentment.
Ameen.
If you could give a message to your great-grandchildren, some words of wisdom for the youth today, what would it be?
If I look at how life has transformed over the many years, and I come from a time where there was no television, and now there's social media and communication throughout the world.
iPads from their birth.
Yeah, so what it would be like when they grow up is going to be something very different from what, as I know it. However, understanding the Quran, living by its values, and always applying that, no matter what circumstances you are in, or what the situation may be at the time that you are living in. If you have the values that are given in the Quran and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law, and you follow it to the best of your ability, and you try to be a mu'min rather than just a Muslim, then you will have achieved something, and it will always be valid for you. You will always be able to apply yourself, whatever those circumstances may be. So hold on to the Quran firmly, understand it. And it does not mean that you must be in a certain attire or you must be engaged in ritual prayer all your day. You live your life, because Islam is a way of life. It is not just a combination of rituals and dogmas that you follow. It's not a part-time thing that you do. Mm-hmm. It's not when you're in the mosque or you're praying your namaz, then you're in a certain frame of mind. And when you're out of that, you're in a different frame of mind. So if you can apply the Quran in your life and the Islamic values, people can be traveling to space or wherever it may be. You will still be a strong, firm person. And those values that you learn from the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, you will never go astray. That is the promise. So I think that it is very important that one adheres to the Quranic values.
Alhamdulillah, that's priceless. I think those words would resonate with a lot of people. Thank you so much for being here today. It's especially special to me because it's the start of something new for me, and I'm glad you could be here to start it with me.
It is my pleasure and my best wishes for you. And I wish you success in what you
Ameen.
embark upon. And may Allah Ta'ala's blessings be on you.
Ameen. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.